Welcome back to the deep dive. So our listener today is really hitting the books for the GPEN certification. They've shared some great resources covering, well, pretty much all the key penetration testing domains. And their mission for us, it's clear. Cut through the noise, give a fast, focused refresh on the absolute essentials needed to, nail that exam. Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. But instead of just talking at you, we're flipping the script a bit. We're making this more like a high-speed audio quiz. Think of these questions as springboards. We'll hit the main GPN areas: planning, recon, exploitation, password attacks. But the real goal isn't just spitting out the right answer. It's about understanding the why behind it all.
Exactly. Every time we throw out a scenario, we're aiming to boil it down, get to that critical insight. What really separates someone who knows this stuff from someone who's certified. We want clarity, confidence, make sure you leave feeling like you've got that structure down cold.
All right, first up, planning. Maybe not the most glamorous part, but honestly, it's fundamental. Get the scope or permissions wrong here, and you're looking at serious trouble, maybe even legal trouble. This is all about defining those boundaries. So let's test that foundation. During that planning phase, which specific document is the go-to for defining things like, say, the acceptable hours for testing? Or maybe specific IP ranges you can or can't touch? Is it A, the rules of engagement, or ROE? B, the project charter? C, a service level agreement maybe? Or D, the test plan itself?
Okay, yeah, the sources are really clear on this. It's got to be the rules of engagement, the ROE.
A then, rules engagement.
Right. Think of the ROE as your legal shield, essentially. What sometimes gets missed, I think, is the difference between the ROE and the test plan. The test plan says how you'll test, but the ROE sets the hard lines. When you start, when you absolutely must stop, can you actually hit that critical production server at 2 a.m.? If it's not explicitly allowed in the ROE, touching it could bring down the client's business, and that means serious repercussions. Those legal and hour constraints are crucial.
Yeah, that's a vital distinction, the how versus the when and where. Okay, so sticking with planning, let's talk frameworks. The sources mention things like PTES, OSS, TMM, common frameworks. Now, if the main point of using a framework like PTES isn't about finding brand new zero-day vulnerabilities, what is its primary goal? Is it just about guaranteeing legal compliance? Or is it more about ensuring a comprehensive testing process? Maybe B or C there.
It's definitely about the process. Option C, ensuring a comprehensive testing process.
C it is.
Yeah, PTES, the Penetration Testing Execution Standard, it's there to make sure your test is thorough, repeatable, and consistent. And really, if you think about it from the client's perspective, that's standardization. That's what they're paying for, reliability. And OSSTMM, the open source security testing methodology manual, kind of builds on that. It offers an even more structured approach, providing actual metrics and ways to ensure repeatability. It really validates the depth of the work.
Okay, let's shift gears now. We've moved past planning, maybe found an initial foothold. Now we're talking about what happens after you get in. Moving around, pivoting, trying to get more privileges. This is the exploitation and escalation domain.
Right, and before we jump into the next question, just a quick thought on study strategy here. These areas like exploitation and especially escalation, they can feel, well, massive.
Right.
So many commands, different paths. If you find this is a weak spot for you while prepping, maybe look into tools like FlashGenius. They offer things like AI-guided learning paths. The idea is it uses data to pinpoint your specific gaps. So you spend your time mastering, say, Linus Prevesc, not just rereading stuff you already get. Use that targeted practice.
Makes sense. Work smarter, not just harder.
Okay, let's get specific. A classic Linux scenario. So you've popped the shell on a Linux box, but you're just a regular user. Limited privileges. You want to see if maybe there's a kernel exploit you can use for privilege escalation. Which command gives you the kernel version info? Is it A, unname rsar, B, ifconfig, cpsef, or D, netstat tutul?
The command you'd run first is unname marshar. That gives you the kernel release version.
Okay, A, unname marshar. Yep. But here's where the real tester's mindset comes in. Just knowing the kernel version, while useful, isn't always the first thing you act on. It raises a question of prioritization. Sure, you could look for a kernel exploit, but finding one, getting the payload, making it work, that can be complex, sometimes unreliable. So what's often a higher priority, especially on Linux?
What should they look for first?
Look for misconfigured SUID binaries. That's usually the quicker win.
Ah, right. Why SUID specifically? Why are they usually a better bet than a kernel exploit?
Well, they're often the low-hanging fruit, An SUID binary lets a normal user run a program with the permissions of the file's owner. And often, that owner is root. So if you find a utility, maybe an admin tool or something, that's got the SUID bit setting correctly and has a vulnerability, you can potentially run commands as root without needing a complex kernel exploit at all. It's faster, often more reliable.
Got it. Efficiency is key, especially when the clock's ticking on a test. Okay, switching to Windows. Let's talk persistence. You've got access to a Windows server, maybe temporary admin rights. You want to make sure you can get back in later, even if the machine reboots. What's a standard, relatively reliable, and less noisy way to achieve that persistence? A, modify the bootloader. B, create a startup script or registry key. C, disable the firewall. D, change BIOS settings.
Yeah, persistence needs to be reliable, but also kind of blend in, right? Creating as a startup script or maybe adding an entry to a run key in the registry, that's your standard approach. So B.
B, create a startup script.
Exactly. Messing with the bootloader, that's super high risk.
Yeah.
Requires deep access, very likely to get detected or break things, very noisy. BIOS changes. Yeah. Same deal. Disabling the firewall doesn't guarantee access later. Good persistence techniques look like normal system activity. Startup scripts, scheduled tasks, admins use those all the time.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Okay, time to pivot again. Let's talk password attacks. This is a big one. Understanding hashes, how they're stored, different formats, and crucially, how to crack them.
And just another quick study tip while we're on a tricky topic. Things like hash formats, NTLM versus, say, bcrypt, the details of cracking techniques, they can be abstract, hard to just memorize from a book. This is where interactive flashcards can really help solidify things. And if you use a platform, maybe like FlashGenius again, look for an AI-powered smart review feature. The key is not just knowing you got an answer wrong, but getting a clear explanation of why that specific attack works on that hash type, or why salting helps, turning mistakes into actual learning.
Right, making those connections is key. Okay, let's talk defense first. Salting hashes, we hear about it all the time. So comparing a salted hash to just a plain unsalted one. What is the fundamental reason salting makes the hash more secure? Is it A, it makes the hash longer? B, it uses a unique salt for each user? C, it makes the hash compute faster? Or D, it uses symmetric encryption?
It's absolutely B, the unique salt per user.
B it is, unique salt per user.
And the why here is critical to grasp for the exam. Think of it like this. Without salt, everyone using the password 123 has the exact same hash stored. Attackers can pre-calculate hashes for common passwords, that's a rainbow table. But with the unique salt per user, even if two users pick password 123, you add a different random salt value to each before hashing. Now, those two identical passwords produce two completely different hashes.
Ah, okay.
So it breaks those pre-computed attacks. Rainbow tables become useless. The attacker is forced to crack each hash individually, which is way, way harder and slower.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So if salting is so good, why? Why do we still see so many breaches from password dumps?
Good question. Often it's down to legacy systems, maybe still using really weak algorithms like MD5, even with salt. Or sometimes the salting is done badly, like using the same salt for every user, which kind of defeats the purpose. Or maybe the salt is too short or predictable. The defense is only as good as its implementation, you know?
Right, the weakest link. Okay, great explanation. Now let's talk about an attack technique often used after getting some initial hashes, lateral movement. What's the main advantage of using a technique like pass the hash or PTH compared to just trying to brute force or dictionary attack the password itself? Does it A, bypass password complexity rules? B, extract the actual plaintext password? C, crack hashes faster? Or D, avoid account lockouts?
The key advantage, the reason PTH is so powerful, is A, it bypasses password complexity entirely.
A, bypasses complexity.
Exactly. You never actually need the user's plaintext password. That's the core concept. It works because Windows systems, particularly with NTLM authentication, often reuse the hash of the password for authentication within the network, not the password itself. So if an attacker grabs that NTLM hash, they can often just present the hash directly to authenticate to other systems or services. Doesn't matter if the password was 25 characters long with symbols and numbers, you just need the hash. And just one final point on cracking strategy here. When you do manage to get a dump of password hashes, the very first thing you need to identify is the hash algorithm. Is it NTLM? Is it SHA-512? Is it bcrypt? Because that dictates everything else. Which tools you use, how much computing power you'll need, whether it's even feasible to crack them in a reasonable time. That algorithm is paramount.
All right, we've hit the final domain for this review, reconnaissance, scanning, and host discovery. This is all about that initial information gathering, finding out what's out there, ideally without setting off alarms. Stealth and efficiency are key here. Okay, first question. You're doing purely passive reconnaissance on a target organization. You want info, but you absolutely do not want to directly touch their systems or alert them. Which tool or technique fits that bill? A. Nmap, B. Wireshark on their network, C. Google Dorking, or D. Metasploit?
For purely passive, it's got to be C, Google Dorking.
C. Google Dork.
Yeah, passive recon means no direct interaction with the target's infrastructure. Google Dorking is just using advanced search engine queries to find information that's already publicly indexed. Misconfigured web servers, leaked documents, usernames, stuff that's out there but maybe shouldn't be. Nmap, Wireshark, if on their network, Metasploit, those are all active. You're sending packets, interacting directly. And actually, speaking of Nmap, let's contrast a couple of its active scanning methods. The SYN scan-SS is often called the stealth scan. Why? Because it starts the TCP handshake but doesn't complete it. Sends a SYN, gets a SYNAC, sends an RST, less likely to get fully logged by basic firewalls or intrusion detection systems. But big caveat, it usually requires root privileges to craft those raw packets.
Right.
Then you have the TCP connect scan-ST. This one does complete the full handshake, uses the operating system's normal connect call. It's generally noisier, more easily logged. But the advantage, doesn't need root. Any user can run it. So there's that trade-off, stealth versus required privileges versus noise level.
Yeah.
Knowing those differences is really important.
Definitely. Those Nmap flags and their implications are classic exam territory. Okay, final question for this segment. You're looking at a web application. You want to figure out what technologies it's running on, web server, maybe backend language, framework. Which approach is generally the least intrusive way to get that info? A, analyzing HTTP headers. B, performing directory brute forcing. C, trying SQL injection. Or D, running a full vulnerability scanner.
The least intrusive, by far, is A, analyzing the HTTP headers.
A, HTTP headers.
Yeah, often when your browser makes a request, the web server sends back response headers. And sometimes those headers contain banners like server, Apache 2.4.52 missiles, or X powered by PHP 8.1. You're just looking at the normal traffic exchange, not launching any attacks or heavy scans. It's basic passive observation of the system's standard behavior. And just to round out passive techniques, remember tools like the harvester. Great for automating searches across public sources, search engines, PGP key servers, LinkedIn to find email addresses, subdomains, employee names associated with a domain. Again, you're collecting publicly available intel without directly probing the target's live systems. That's the essence of passive recon. #tag outro.
Wow, okay, that was a rapid-fire run-through. But hopefully a really solid structural review. We touched on all 4 key GPN domains. We hit the absolute necessity of the rules of engagement for defining those legal and scope boundaries. We talked about prioritizing those misconfigured SUI binaries on Linux, often a faster win than complex kernel exploits. And how unique salting is the key factor that stops rainbow table attacks dead in their tracks. Plus, passive versus active recon differences.
Right, those core concepts.
Yeah.
And look, if you found parts of that quiz challenging, that's actually good. It means you now know exactly where to focus your final study push. This is the perfect time to start incorporating full-length exam simulations under timed conditions. It's not just about knowing the material, it's about performing under pressure, managing your time effectively during the actual test. That's crucial for reducing anxiety on the day. And also, maybe find a one-stop resource hub somewhere with solid guides, cheat sheets, maybe command references all in one place. Saves you time hunting around, lets you focus purely on review.
Absolutely. Practice under pressure is key. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Time for your final provocative thought. We talked about prioritizing targets based on asset criticality back in the planning phase. Makes sense. But now, let's say you're deep in the exploitation phase. You've found multiple vulnerabilities on different systems. Which one do you prioritize exploiting first? Do you go for the vulnerability with the highest official CVSS severity score? Or do you prioritize the one, maybe lower severity, that offers the most direct, immediate path to gaining persistence on the network? Think about that trade-off. A huge thanks for sharing your study resources and your mission with us today. We really hope this deep dive helps solidify those core concepts and pushes you confidently towards that GPEN certification. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep